For some people, it's like religion. You know, once a week you go to a club, it inspires you. The DJ acts in some ways like a preacher and shares knowledge and music with you.
You can't describe it, it's the best feeling in the world, especially when you've got the crowd in the palm of your hands. Once you've got them and you go to your crescendo, it gets really emotional. Sometimes I can feel like tears coming.
I think of DJs as extraordinary engineers of mood. You know, these are people who really tap into creating extraordinary feelings amongst people.
It's like having lived through the decline and fall of the Roman Empire sometimes. It's such a huge epic event. You feel like you've travelled through time and space together as a group. And it's an amazing, amazing thing.
The urge to dance for hours on end, night and day if need be, is very strong with today's young Australians. With music played by the world's leading DJs, dance culture has emerged from its nocturnal haunts, flaunting itself in broad daylight.
We now have this phenomenon of dance parties, which tend to be characterised by masses of people being brought together in places where they experience a kind of sensory overload, with lots of music, lots of bodies packed tightly together. And what's interesting about them is that they take place over a long period of time. I think that's a really important feature of them, that it's not just an hour and a half rock and roll gig or something like that. It's about a sustained engagement with a more or less relentless sound, taste, you know, complete sensorial experience.
The music's extremely loud. It's often very fast and driven music, but you can sort of sit back and let it just wash over you. And in a lot of ways, the later classical writers, especially the romantic composers, they were very much interested in sort of overwhelming people's senses. The dance music can create the same kind of aesthetic. And I think that's a lot of the reason why people enjoy it so much. It is one of its major functions, really, to not be melodic, but to, in a sense, be just accompaniment without melody. And in this case, accompaniment for dance.
Because there are no steps, you can't get the steps wrong. And I think that's very significant. I think it's one of the factors that encourages men to dance so much.
The dancers are on show and the exhibition is young, fit and sexy. Life's good and they're happy to let it show. Some do it fueled by drugs, but regardless, all are transported by the music and the people around them.
You move your body to the beat of the music. Let your body relax and just go with the flow.
No one cares what you think, you dance how you like. It makes you feel good, you get all the confidence in the world. It's just so much fun. The music really gets into you and you can just dance for hours.
One of the great ways to affect changes in people and to make people feel something is to make them move together. We know that learning takes place through bodies, and some of the most intense ways we feel are actually through sharing movement of various kinds with other people, whether that's running along a beach with someone or playing sport or dancing with someone. We always talk about losing your own identity in dance or feeling that you sort of exceed your own barriers when you're dancing with a whole lot of people. And I think that's something which we do enjoy feeling.
I actually think there is a spiritual dimension to what's going on. It's not about God. I mean, God isn't there on the dance floor. But you often hear young people today talk about how they believe in living for the moment and living in the moment. And that's the thing about this music and what it does to you. It encloses you in a kind of a magical, temporary moment where time stands still and time is reorganised. And it's what happens in that space. The churches are dead. In a way, this is possibly the closest thing we've got for our generation in the West to some kind of liturgical domain that reconnects you with some kind of interior spirituality.
Today's dance is firmly mainstream, but its origins were pure 1970s disco. But the true beginning was 1988, London, when English dance music combined with a new drug, ecstasy. It stormed the world. Illegal and potentially harmful, ecstasy, called simply E, lifted the nightclub experience. Energy, empathy, light and sound, everything was made better.
There's always been drug use. There's drug use in primitive societies as well, of course. But what started out in a small way in the 80s on dance floors, particularly in the gay community, suddenly exploded in the 90s. And everyone, from top to bottom, from the elites, from professionals, from doctors and politicians and lawyers, down to the gutter, young and now much older, are using drugs when they come to these dance parties.
When I was first exposed to DJs, discos were pretty much places where girls would go and dance around their handbags, and there'd be a whole bunch of guys leering at the bar, kind of, you know, wanting to get into their pants. These days, it's a lot different. You know, the advent of e-culture in the late 80s and early 90s changed that emphasis and encouraged people to just get onto the dance floor together.
In a lot of ways, it became the great escape from the 9 to 5. And when dance came in, the economic times were really good, unemployment was down, and people weren't protesting against anything, but everyone was working hard, and this became like the great escape. It was back to basic beats. It's almost a cliche now to say it was tribal, but it was a very tribal experience to walk in, and before you knew it, you were dancing for like 5 hours non-stop, and everyone was just enjoying each other's company. It wasn't about watching a band, it was about finding yourself and expressing yourself on the dance floor.
The driving force on the dance floor was a DJ whose instrument was a turntable on which to play records, vinyl. The idea was not about introducing records, but performing them.
In relatively recent times, the recording device became an instrument, and the DJ was the player of that instrument in a sense. The music wasn't just simply pre-recorded tracks played one after each other. They can mix the tracks any way that they want to. They can overlay sounds and so forth at the same time, and basically to create a musical world then and there, and partially improvised too, as if they were a jazz player, reading the audience and reading the audience's emotions and so forth in order to decide what to do next.
When it comes to planning a set for a night, I just get the records I feel for the day, put them into a box. I never practice. I never go, oh. It just happens for me. Like, I'm very old school like that. Any mixes I do basically happen on the dance floor.
There's more to it than just matching the tempos. There are phrases and there are timings in music, and I think you just have a feel for music, and you feel when the breakdowns are coming, you feel when the right moments are. That all definitely helps, but there's plenty of DJs who don't do that, who you can hear in a lot of clubs all over the world.
Most DJs aren't musically trained, but the good ones have real instinct that approaches composition. Their sets are not chosen randomly. Instead, they're sensitive to the mood of the crowd, and in that way, they gain the upper hand.
Their presence is everywhere through this extraordinarily exquisite musical manipulation that the DJ sort of programming's too hard a word, but he's building for people. And I think one of the great characteristics of these parties is they work on these long sort of waves rather than coming to abrupt climaxes and disappearing. So there's this amazing kind of sustained fluidity.
When you first take over from the last DJ, it takes you half an hour you've got to control them. And then once, I can sense when they're ready to go, and I'll drop it and get them into the groove, and then you just keep building and building.
There's this incredible interplay between audience and DJ, and that relationship creates an incredible amount of energy in the room. It's electric. It's really special. It's something that you can't recreate or duplicate in any other way. You can't put it onto a CD and have people feel the same way, or put it onto film. You have to be there.
In my collection, you'll find the Rolling Stones, Public Enemy, Kraftwerk. You'll find 70s electronica like Telex. You'll find Malcolm McLaren. It just goes all over. But it's all about feel and rhythm. It's not about just pounding something out, or it does have to be to a point musical, definitely. Not always vocal, but there's got to be something that hook onto that makes your hips move. If you can sort of cross over genres and put different styles together at the same time and, make the Eurythmics tribal or make Michael Jackson breakbeat, that's clever. And also people can have a laugh. Dancing shouldn't have to be that serious. You should be laughing and smiling and happy.
Whatever the musical style, be it house, hip-hop, garage, trance, techno, by playing records in a certain way, the DJ has tremendous power to affect people's state of mind and body.
The release that people get through dancing, through being more connected with their bodies, you can see that they're actually listening, not just with their ears, but with their bodies. And hopefully you're close enough to see their eyes. You can actually see in their eyes whether they're digging what you're doing or not.
There's a very interesting connection with Christianity here. Christianity and high culture pushed the body out of the picture. Christianity hated the body. The soul, the inner hidden essence, was the real thing, the thing that lived forever. The body was something that withered and died, and why would you celebrate it? So dance has always been a big problem for Christianity, but that doesn't mean that it's been a big problem for religion. Dance has been right at the heart of Hinduism, for example. Hinduism saw the whole universe as a kind of a dance. And in the dance party, it's the body being reintegrated. It's Western popular culture saying, no, we're going to reintegrate the body with the spirit.
And that process, as the DJs all know, is fueled by rhythm and the human response to it.
Nothing happens without rhythm, Any culture you go to, some cultures have saxophone, some cultures have bagpipes, but they all have a drum. And of course, some rhythms are more complicated than others. And so in Australia, for example, are not necessarily used to complicated rhythms. So I think what tends to happen here is people naturally evolve into a rhythm that they understand. So in the dances that's happening here, raves and things like this, you have this doof, 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 doof. And of course, anyone can relate to that as a basic pulse.
In the West, throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century, there's been a real effort by high culture. You think of Picasso or Matisse in painting, for example, to get back to the primitive, to rescue whatever that thing was that we've, in the 19th century in bourgeois culture, we kind of eradicated, and to get back to that. And it's connected in music with popular culture. And of course, in popular culture, the big thing has been black African music that's come through American dance music and the blues and so on. And that's erupted into dance party culture. And I think once the dance party phenomenon started to really kick off in the 80s and the 90s, people started to be very aware that this actually did have something in common with the primitive dance rituals and tribal dance rituals.
There's some kind of primeval memory that we link into when we dance, and when we dance in groups of people. Maybe we don't have the fires now, but we've got incredible lasers. We've got really cool lights, you know, and there's a DJ.
For many centuries, dance has had purpose, ritual value and significance in daily routines and celebrations of important events. Dance was a tool. To us today, is it merely an indulgence?
In simple societies, ritual might be seen as part of the kind of spiritual work of the culture. Whereas when we move to more complex societies, we actually have demarcated time for leisure and for play, so that what we might see in dance parties is perhaps framed for participants not as that spiritual work towards bonding the culture together, but something more playful.
I actually think you can come to enjoy yourself, to dance, to celebrate, to lose your mind, to have fun, and for it to be a very serious thing at the same time. I think this thing about community is what's right at the heart of it, that you come and you play together and you have a wonderful time, but you're compensating for this lack of community.
The more you want to break out of a system, the more liberating that experience is of dancing. And I think you'll find that when you move or dance, you free yourself from something, you know? And even the most uptight person, if you can get them to move, I think that has a liberating experience.
The spread of the dance now is wide. People are on the move to expand the experience. 8,000 city dwellers have driven for an hour out of Melbourne here to the bush, escaping the urban confines, but bringing the urban sounds, paraphernalia and decibels with them.
I think the bottom line is people like to get together and celebrate, and that works really well outdoors. People love it. The whole thing of starting off in the night time, and I mean the music follows this, going through the darkness, and then like the quite crazy period is like the little bit of darkness just before dawn. Starts getting lighter, and the people playing the music are aware of that. The music also starts getting lighter, and people start getting lighter. And by the time the sun's shining, people are generally sort of dancing around like mad people with their hands in the air and smiles on their faces.
It's just amazing dancing outside. And it's amazing hearing the music come through the ground and be so clean and crisp, and there's no distortion because the bass is just coming through the soil, basically. It's sort of a bit back to basics because you're dancing in the dirt and outside.
One of the first times that I was actually turned on to this sort of music was at an outdoor party like Earthcore. And it struck me as being rather unusual that the music seemed to resound so well with the natural environment, the trees and the sky and so forth. And I thought that was weird because the music is electronic and artificially derived, and you would imagine therefore much more urban, and in a lot of ways it is. But when you put it in that context, then it does really seem to speak the language of nature, the clicking and the beeping. But when I thought about it, nobody seems to think that it's unusual that orchestral music can do that, and that Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony can effectively, evoke a storm or a pleasant day in the countryside. And if a symphony orchestra can do it, then there's no reason why synthesizers can't do it.
Today, the DJ is not only God, but also king. many of them more famous, more exalted than the music they spin and the composers they can make or break.
You've got the DJs that are earning £100,000 for one gig, or on the point of going on tour and earning $1 million in a month. That's kind of sick. Because A, they're not even playing their own music, and B, they're probably not even mixing, because they've got the whole thing down on CD, and they know who I'm talking about, because I'm an old hat, so to speak.
I wish we were on those kind of fees, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
There is a kind of tendency of musicians to bitch about DJs, and I think that, God, if it is so easy, get yourself a record box and, you know, and start doing it yourself. And I think we're in a lucky position in that we kind of have done that, and we do both. Being a DJ and being a musician is not a mutually exclusive position, you know.
The DJ has now evolved, has somehow come full circle. Live on stage, centre stage, backed by real live musos, but playing a mouse and a keypad? Is this adulation of the silicon chip deserved, or a poor substitute for the real thing?
You're obliged to go and do your stuff live. And a lot of dance artists, I think because of the DJ thing, are happy to just stand on stage, anonymous silhouettes, and basically play a CD or a DAT, which is fine, but because our background was playing in funk bands, we weren't prepared to go around the world doing that. So we tried to go for this mixture of technology and live musicians, which is a tricky thing to get right.
The dance, with its massive fellowship and empathy, was supposed to be inclusive and fair. But the elevation, even the adoration of the DJ, is getting in the way.
The DJ has almost taken the place of the rock star, and the whole ego thing is now back in there with superstar DJs that fly around the world. It reached a peak in the late 90s where DJs were hiring Learjets to fly from gig to gig so they could get as many gigs across the European continent as they could in one night. So the DJ is probably now in danger of turning dance music into everything it wasn't.
The only time it gets kind of semi-pop star is when we go to LA, DJ-wise, you know. You sort of walked up to the club and the queue's been around the block, you know, and there's people desperate trying to get tickets.
The Graham's outside.
The Graham's outside, all that kind of thing. It's quite funny. And you walk on to DJ and, like, before you've even put a record on, there's an enormous roar, you know, and it's just, you're basically playing someone else's music. I mean, admittedly, if you play it in the right order and you get it in time, then that's good, but you are putting records on at the end of the day, so it's a bit weird.
We play 20 records and get a lot of money. I mean, we're supermodels more than God. You know, we're the millennium supermodels.
To have people come up and say, you're a legend, you're amazing, that's great, but it really isn't what it's about. I'd love it if we could get back a few of those old school values and attitudes and remember that we're all here together, that no one's better than anybody else, and to bring things right back to music.
Dance is not so much here to stay, it's more that we've never been without it. Every tribe on the planet has been doing it for centuries. The music is not about to stop.
Next on Sunday afternoon, we see how the American artist Whistler reshaped 19th century painting in Great Artists.